A lot of times, the other thing I'll do is read it back from the beginning if I hit that wall of burnout. And for some reason, it's always like a comfort because like you write what you want to read, right? And so when I read it back, it's like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. I can pick this up from here. And I always leave it off like this is a cliffhanger for me. Now I got to figure out what happens next.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, an Amazon Top 25 best-selling author known for writing kick-butt heroines and delicious men in dark and dangerous worlds. And if you're new here, then welcome. Here, we're dedicated to interviewing fellow authors and professionals within the publishing industry in hopes to offer you insight, resources, and inspiration. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to an Amazon Top 10 best-selling author known for writing steamy sports romance with a happily ever after guaranteed. We are talking to the one and only Lisa Susan. How are you today?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm so good, better now that you're on, and I love the looks of the books in the back. It's very aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. Thank you. I love your background as
Oh,
well. It looks so pretty.
thank you. I created ambience for us as a candle. We're
I
ready
like
for
the
this
candle.
interview.
Yeah.
I would love if you could take me back to the start of your journey and what that looked like. Why did you start writing in the first place, and how did you find publishing for the first time?
Oh, great question. So, this goes back quite a long way. I have always loved to write, and I never really wanted to share that with anybody. I used to be a high school teacher. So when I got home from school, I would, instead of like turning on the TV and vegging out, I would go to my computer and add to my stories. So I just have done that for a very long time. And I shared something with my husband that I had written, and he's like, "This is pretty good." And around the same time, he had been listening to different podcasts on like self-publishing on Amazon. It was kind of a brand new thing. It was 2013, actually, it was 2012 when we had the conversation. And so I kind of took one of my stories and edited it and slapped like the Amazon creator cover because I had no idea what I was doing. And in May of 2013, I published my first book. And now it's 81 books later. This one, Snap Decisions, releasing at the end of this month. So it has been quite a journey to get to this point.
81 books. Damn. Okay. We have a lot to cover then. I would especially love to know because publishing in 2013, very different time. I first published in 2014, completely different time to what the
Completely.
industry is now. Um, but I am curious as to when you noticed the snowball effect in your career. Was it immediately? Was it, 5, 10 books in? When was that moment where you thought, oh, this can be something. I have demand for my books. And when did you take the lunge to go full time?
So my first book was out, right? And it was started selling. Like it was easy back then. You just put it on Amazon and people bought it. And I had a review that was like, "Oh, I love this. I want more of these characters." And I was like, "Okay, great, more are coming," which I had not written at the time. Like I started making promises that I had to figure out how to keep then, right? Because you're new and don't know what you're doing. And I did. It ended up being a trilogy. The first book ended with a happily ever after, though. So it wasn't like really a traditional trilogy, but we took another character and gave that character a story in the second one. And truthfully, that first trilogy is now unpublished because it feels so far away from how I write now. And then my second series, which was three more books, is also unpublished at this point. But then, so it kind of snowballed there. And then, it's kind of a weird story how I became full time in that I was pregnant with my son, who's now 10. And I was still a high school teacher and kind of publishing, wanting to go full time, but not sure if I was there yet. But because I'd been teaching in Arizona for 10 years, I was part of the retirement system. And so we decided I would retire and stay home with the baby and give writing a full time try. So that was back in 2016. I finished out the 2015-16 school year, and I've been doing it full time ever since.
That's
So
amazing. Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you.
How did you go with the shift? Because not only were you pregnant that time, so a very delicate, vulnerable period for you as well, but also it's very difficult going full time. And I think a lot of people assume, and I had the same naivety to it as well, that when you have like a full-time job as well, that you'll have all this spare time and it'll be great and everything will be so structured. And it kind of becomes almost more difficult to create those new routines because you were so used to, right, I have these 40 hours a week or whatever I have to work at this job and I only have these times. And you usually like smash out those times, but then all of a sudden it feels like you have heaps of time, but then you also have a bigger responsibility in what you're trying to build as well. So, how did you go with creating that routine for yourself?
Yeah, it was tough. So I had the baby in December and then finished out the school year. Well, maternity leave, finished out the school year. And then so really that first semester of when I would have gone back to school, but now I was full time, I had a newborn. So it's kind of like having a full-time job, right? When you're taking care, and really kids in general are a full-time job. But it's kind of, it took the same number of hours of attention away from writing as the full-time career might have at the time. I also, at that time, instead of completely giving up teaching, I did some adjunct instruction with the community college. So I was still going into a part-time job teaching. But after a year of doing that, it felt like as much work as being in the high school classroom. And so then I kind of like officially hung up teaching, and then it was just full-time home with the baby who is now a toddler, right? Becoming like starting becoming mobile and all that. And so it it was hard, like in the early days when napping wasn't, when it was those 3 hour blocks of time that you had, became less and less until he started school. But then it was preschool he was starting, and I was pregnant with my second. So like as soon as he started school and I would have bigger blocks of time, now we had another little one coming. Literally, she was due on his first day of preschool. So and she was born early.
Yep.
But so the kind of those blocks of times that I was hoping I would get that would open up, now I had another newborn. So it's just finding time, and then now they're 6 and 10. So they're both in school full time, which when that started last year, when my little one was in kindergarten, it was like, oh my God, I have like 7 hours a day for just sitting at my computer. And then, like you said, it becomes this overwhelming amount of time. Like, what do I do with all this time? And now I'm scrolling Facebook and I get off task more easily. So a big part of that is discipline. And like I've had to, my best tip that I can give on being disciplined is to set that, if you have a phone that has like a work focus, set up your work focus. So you're not getting Target sending you a notification because it takes your eyes away from your screen, right? You're looking at your watch or your screen or whatever, or a text from a friend or whatever. It just takes your attention away from writing. And so I do Pomodoro. Are you familiar with Pomodoro?
Oh, tell us more.
So it's the Pomodoro method is where you work for 25 minutes and then you take a 5 minute break. So I'll set a 25-minute timer, put on my work focus, and just write for 25 minutes. And then ideally I get up and move around and like take a walk, or I have little dumbbell weights in my office, do some like weight training kind of thing just to get the blood flowing again, take your eyes away from the screen. And then jump back in and do another 25. And on the days when I follow that, I have huge word counts, but it's a lot of discipline to force yourself to do that every day. So it doesn't happen every day, but it happens a lot of days.
Yeah. There's two things I want to go off this is one, I want to talk about our health because you mentioned dumbbells, and I think um if I could give any advice to newer authors, it would be making sure that you're prioritizing that now. I think a lot of us that have been in this game for over a decade learn the hard way. I know I certainly have. As to like there's wear and tear on the body. Like I've noticed in the last year, especially, I've had to switch over this recent book to dictation because I'm
Mhm.
having issues with my hands and my wrists, which is very unfortunate. But when you're writing so much as expected, there's certain exercises that I'll do just for those, and also like walking pads, like incorporating different things so that we're just not sitting in this very
Right.
bad position constantly. So I'd love to know what you've learnt over the years that definitely helps you. and burnout as well. And then we'll talk about the word count as well
Yeah.
afterwards, because I know you're smashing out those word counts. I want to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, yeah. So we live in Arizona, so in the summer it gets to be like, well, we're Fahrenheit, right? And but it's like 117 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm not sure what that translates to, but it's hot. It is like stepping into an oven. Okay. So so in the summer this is a little harder, but we live by a lot of walking paths and a little preserve like by our house. So I'll just walk and dictate when I can. Sometimes the scene I'm writing doesn't lend itself as well to dictation, but that's like a big thing for me. Like I always say I hate exercising, but I could walk forever. So I'll just like walk circles around the park or around the neighborhood and dictate. And that's been kind of a game changer for me. Except then you have to transcribe your dictation. That sometimes takes a little longer. But I mean, in general, that's been helpful to get higher word counts. And we had a treadmill and I had like a table for it so I could type, but I found I can't type when I'm walking. Like it's not as easy. I'm not coordinated enough. So
I'm the same.
yeah. But I can walk and dictate. Or a lot of times, like if I take my daughter to dance, I'll go out to my car in the parking lot and sit in the parking lot and dictate, and things like that. So, which isn't movement or exercise, but it's just another place where I can sneak in a little more words,
Yeah.
when otherwise I might not be able to.
Yeah. So have you ever experienced burnout as well? And what are some of the, I love asking this question because I always know the answer, but what were some of the conversations that you had to have with yourself and some of the new structures that you had to put in place to ensure as best as you can that it doesn't happen again? And I'm also curious as to whether it took you longer to recover from your burnout than you thought it would, because I think it a lot of people are thrown off guard by how, like, cool, I'll have sleep for a week. And then you're like, oh no, this has taken me months to recover
Yeah,
by. So we put the big red flag on this one, try and prevent having
right.
burnout.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been there. And I guess I'm lucky in the way that have you done Becca Syme's Strengths for Authors? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm a number one achiever. And when
Yay!
yay, see?
I've
So
seen
when I
you.
had my call with, it was with Terry, like the coaching call after you take the test, we kind of talked about burnout. This was years ago, and I will never forget this. But he said, because you're a number one achiever, you will hit burnout and it'll last like a couple days, and then you'll get over it because your achiever will come out and like force you to get back to work. And that's kind of how it is for me. And it's more, I think sometimes my last issue when I found myself getting on that line of burnout, it was more imposter syndrome. And it was like one of those, like, is this book good enough? And, are people going to like this? Because it's a new series that I'm writing. Are they going to like it like as much as my last series? And that one was hard to overcome because like you want to keep writing through that, but at the same time you're questioning every move that each character makes and every sentence that you're writing, and sometimes even the words, like, is this the right word here? Like, what do I even know how to write anymore? And for me it's really, I just have to push through it and keep going, and maybe that's those days when I set the timer and sit down and stare at the words. A lot of times, the other thing I'll do is read it back from the beginning if I hit that wall of burnout. And for some reason, it's always like a comfort because, like, you write what you want to read, right? And so when I read it back, it's like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. I can pick this up from here. And I always leave it off like, this is a cliffhanger for me. Now I got to figure out what happens next. So I've been lucky in that I'm able to kind of push through that burnout. But when you hit it, it's like a shock to your system. Like, what do I do? This is awful. But again, I've been lucky that I've been able to get past it pretty quickly.
That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit more about imposter syndrome because it's common and it needs to be
Mhm.
discussed more. I know like a lot of people are like, oh, imposter syndrome, but it can be very debilitating at the same time. And I find it interesting when it appears when you're years into your career as well. I feel like there's so much leveling up that happens in this career, and sometimes it catches you off guard as well. You're like, why
Mhm.
am I in this headspace? What do you think was perhaps the thing that triggered for that specific series that made you feel like an imposter? Was it just like new concept, new genre, or Did you like the previous book, was that like just hit it out of the gate, so then it put that pressure on you to make sure that you're hitting the next one just as big, if not better?
And it was a combination. So my last series was the Nash Brothers, and it did really, really well. The first book, Dating the Defensive Back, was like a unicorn book, right? It hit the top 100. It stayed there for 29 days. It went to, and I've told you, right? I started in 2013. This book released in 2024. 6 months after release, it was my number one seller of all time. So and at the time it was like 70 books, something like that, right? My 70th around there. So it's that unicorn book. And so because that series then became so successful, I started a new series, which is the Bradley Legacy, which Snap Decision is the fourth book, which releases March 23rd, in that series. And it's doing well too, but the one that gave me the imposter syndrome was actually a new project that I started. And um, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this part. So, so I have an agent now and I'm writing it for a different purpose. We're trying to shop it with editors and try a traditional route with it. And just the thought of a wider audience reading it, potentially, and new editors and new people judging it got in my head when I was trying to write it. And it made it to where I'm like, is this on par? Is this Lisa Suzanne writing, right? Is this like my other books? And I actually pulled a beta reader from one of my I have a influencer reader group. I pulled someone from that and asked them, can you read this and give me feedback on it as a beta? Not my normal beta team, but just somebody who's read a lot of my books and is familiar with my work. And she loved it. And she said, it's totally in line with your normal style and stuff. So that was like the reassurance I needed. And then I sent it to my agent and now I just sent it to her a couple days ago. So now I'm in that like nervous waiting for like the next year because I know this all moves at like a glacial pace, but it's exciting and something different.
Yeah, I love this as well because like when you look back, when we go back to 2012 through to 2014, or actually even lower, I'd probably say 2012 to 2016, there was such stigmatization around independently published books and
Mhm.
the quality of what they had to offer, even though that wasn't necessarily the case. But there was definitely a bit of a trad versus indie situation.
Right.
And then I feel like it kind of shifted maybe 2016, 2017, where people were realizing actually there's a lot of indie authors here that are making bank and they're producing quality books, like traditional publishers as well. I think once you're so set in a particular, you know what works for you, you know what works for your brand, you know the systems that you've put in place. It is scary then to expand in a different way, especially when you had that stigmatization from the start of your career. So I think
Right.
that it becomes an interesting thing as well because you've built a decade career here and you're literally selling yourself. You're like, here, I can show you the facts, I can show you the figures. I've worked my butt off to get here and
Yeah.
this is what I have to present. And that's scary too, because, not everyone's going to connect with your voice or whatever your
Right.
story is. And so it's a very, I want to say, vulnerable shift for indie authors who are going into that. So I tip my hat off to you. This is
Thank you.
courageous and it's exciting at the same time.
It is really exciting. And it's, I guess, so, my husband and I were talking, it was several months ago. And he kind of said, well, what do you want from this career? And I said, I want to be in bookstores. And I was like crying when I said it. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from. Like, it never felt like this conscious thought, but I see a lot of my friends making their way into bookstores and it's amazing. And I'm like, I want that too. I've always wanted to be an author. It was always something that I loved even though I didn't want to share my work with anyone, right? But which we talked about. But writing was always like my passion. And that's why I taught high school language arts, where I was teaching my students how to write. And so I was on the right path. I just wasn't quite there when I was doing that. But yeah, it is exciting and a little scary, and we'll see what comes of it. And if nobody wants it, then I still have a book that I wrote in the introduction to a new series with characters that I love and I can still publish it myself.
Yeah.
So there's always that option.
Absolutely. What do you think when you look back on, when you reflect on your career, what do you think If you could go back to baby Lisa, baby author Lisa, what would be the three things that you would say to her, do you think?
Oh gosh. Well, don't be scared to share your writing with other people, for one. And I think I would tell her how if you want to publish and be a full-time author, it's not just sitting around writing books all the time. It is a business that it's a, not even a small business. It's a business that we're running, and we're the bosses and we make all the decisions, and you know have a team, and have the people around you that can support you, and also that nobody's ever going to know your books and love your books as much as you do. So be careful who you bring on that team and who you hire things out to.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I would absolutely love to talk about actually team and delegation because, as you said, this is a business, and I think it
Mhm.
catches a lot of people off guard as to how much is involved with it. Especially, you publish your first book and it's all like super exciting. You're choosing the covers and you're doing the formatting and all of that stuff. But then once you're pumping out books quite regularly, you've published 81 books, which is phenomenal. You kind of need to create a well-oiled machine, and it doesn't always work out like that. And as we've shifted now into, we're 2026 now, social media is huge, marketing is a wild beast in itself. There's a lot of uncertainty as things change, algorithms change. And it's very difficult to pivot and keep up with that. So, what were some of the first things that you started delegating outwards, and where do you sit now? What are the things that are you must do? And you're like, I need other people to take over on this. So then we can really create as many amazing products as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you know what? It changes all
Yeah.
the time, honestly. So I guess like thinking back to like 2014, I had a reader who kind of volunteered to be my assistant, and I paid her in gift cards, and but it was one of those like, oh, I'll post for you on your page, and then she would make a post and it would be riddled with grammatical errors, and I was like, but I don't want to be a micromanager, but at the same time, this is my brand, and even back in 2014, I was like, I need to be the one doing that, or at least approving it ahead of time. So we kind of parted ways, and then I hired various publicity companies, and now I've been with Valentine PR for 2 years in April, and I'm really happy with them. But they do like all of my publicity, right? So blogger arcs, influencer, all this stuff for releases, for cover reveals, for everything. And they're highly organized, and they keep me on track too. And they're like, we needed your graphics today. Like, all right, I got to get those. So just things like that. Is they do all that stuff. They have other services included too, and this is not like a plug for any publicity company, but to have somebody who can take on a lot of that stuff is really helpful. So I rely on them for a lot. And then I've had PAs, and I've parted ways with PAs. I feel like I've gotten into situations where people promise a lot and don't deliver. And that's tough as someone who's like a total control freak to try to like hand things over to people who don't do what they say they're going to do. So my husband works with me quite a bit. Like I go to him with major decisions. He does my finances and kind of a lot of the background stuff. I had hired out some ads to see if I could get some help with that, and I just took those back a couple weeks ago. So I do 90% of the work on everything. Like I said, my husband does finances, and then I just in February hired someone to do my graphics for social media, because it's one of those like I love making graphics, but it's such a time suck that I need to be using those hours on writing. So to pumping out those fast words, right? Smashing those word count goals. So right now and I did have someone who was doing TikToks for me too, but I just let her go too, because TikTok's not working the same way that it once was, and I'm not seeing anything from it anymore. So it's kind of just constantly staying on top of things, seeing what my pressure points are at any specific time, and finding someone who can help me with that at that time.
Yeah. And I think it's important to add as well. you need to try things, and sometimes things don't work out as well,
Mhm.
or they work for one season and then not for another as well. I think for
Right.
me personally, that was the hardest lesson, perhaps, because I would take it so personally when something didn't work out, and I
Yeah.
couldn't understand why. But do that same thing 2 years later, it may have shifted slightly. And it's always
Right.
important to remember what works for somebody may not necessarily work for you. And I feel like a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes as I say that, but it is the truth.
It's
Like
so true.
you
Yeah.
need to trial it and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then at least you tried, and then
Right.
shift to the next thing. It
Yeah.
makes it trickier when it's our own money invested in it, but it's the only way that you'll figure out what works.
It does.
Um,
And sorry, just another thing to add to that too is I am like super non-confrontational. Like I don't, I know I'm the boss because it's my business, but I tend to like hold on to people and have them keep working for me far longer than I should because I'm so non-confrontational. Do you know what I mean? And so that's like something I need to deal with and get over. And it's like I'll ask my husband like 10 times, "So, do you think I should keep working with this person?" And he'll be like, "It sounds like it's time to move on." And then like a month passes and then, So I think that's important to note too, that if you have a gut instinct telling you it's time to cut ties, then pull on those big girl pants and cut ties and as hard as it is.
Absolutely. And I've been in the same position as well. It's never
Mhm.
comfortable. You just
Right.
get more used to it, should I say. And it's okay as well when it happens, because and it doesn't mean that you can never have another PA again because it didn't work out
Right.
that one time. It may even be two or three people that aren't the right fit. Like I've had the same thing. And then I have my current PA who's just magical. Like it just clicks into place.
Yep.
And it's okay to go through that screening process. It may feel like there's a lot of time or a lot of money invested, and often it is, but once you start building the right team around you, that's when it starts working like a machine as well.
Yep.
But if you're also
Absolutely.
not at that point as well, just see where you can delegate an hour or two
Yep.
of work, like whatever it may be that you're like, you know what, I'm really bad at creating graphics on Canva. I try and create graphics for 5 to 10 hours a week, whatever. If somebody can do that in 2 hours for you and what you need, I would say that's value for money.
Right. Right.
I actually want to talk about the big word counts, because 81 books within, what are we, like 13 years? Insane. And in the best of ways, though. I would love to know, what are your big word count days? Are we looking at around 10,000 words? And also, I would love to know what your writing process looks like. Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Are you quite structured in the way that you write your books? Like, once you know what you're writing, I'm going to smash this book out in 2 weeks. Like, what does this look like for you?
I'll start with my process. I outline and I have, since I'm a former teacher, I make myself worksheets and I have to fill in all the worksheets. And it's all the major plot points. It's, Romancing the Beat,
Yes.
that book. So I made a worksheet like out of each of the main beat points, right? That you write, each of the beats that you write in a romance book. And then so those kind of become like my chapter headers. I write in Word. So when I start writing, those are my chapter headers. And sometimes that each point will split into 2 or 3 or 4 chapters. And then it'll veer off course and I'll have to replot, like that happens. But I also have a worksheet on goal, motivation, conflict, where I get to know the characters. I assign them strengths from Becca's time, the Clifton strengths. And I kind of get to know their personalities a little bit. And it helps that I write in a world. So many times we've already met these characters, so I already know a little something about them. And that is a good starting point. But that's like really how I start each book is I'll do my worksheets and my plotting and put it into my document, and then I'm kind of ready to go. Now, in order to get to 81 books in 13 years, I don't know. I don't have any of my book ones like handy because I have a signing in a couple weeks, so I have like everything stacked around me. So Home Game is the first sports romance I ever published, and it was in 2021. Yeah, so it turns 5 this year, which is crazy, but it's not very long, right? So that is book one in a 5 book series that follows the same couple through all 5 books, and the books all end in cliffhangers. So it's like to be continued in the next book. I was gonna flip to, yeah. I don't know if you can see that, but to be continued in book 2, Long Game. Okay, so then you pick up book 2. So they're really serials, but Technically, they're full length because they're all 40,000 words or more, which is technically full length. But that's how I have 8 series that follow that format. And so that's 40 of my 81 books. And then with Dating the Defensive Back that I talked about earlier, that was my first full length standalone um, sports romance. And so Home Game was the other one. This one actually spent 28 days in the top 100, and then Dating the Defensive Back was 29 days. But this was my 30th book, and it was my first one that ever hit the top 100. So it took 30 books, and it took from 2013 to 2021 before I hit. And so I hear that a lot, like, well, you think it's like an overnight success when you see people, but you don't know how many years that they've spent working on it and perfecting it and getting it out into the world. So,
And I think there's an element too here, and Becca Syme talks about it as well. And for those who aren't familiar with Becca Syme, I mean, I talk about her quite often on this channel, but she is an advocate for the Clifton Gallup strengths, which are amazing. It just helps you understand yourself a little bit more, what motivates you, why, and how you work. It helps dissolve comparing yourself with others. Like that's what it did for me. It empowered me in that sense. So I would definitely highly recommend it. But Becca Syme has a very interesting perspective, I want to say, on like how different people work. And she has always been very vocal, and I agree with her that, yes, it is hard work, and yes, but it's also timing and luck. And I agree with that as well, because you could have written the most fantastic book that you absolutely love, and you're like, this is it, and it not perform the way that you think it is. And then the next book where you thought, well, it's not good, it's okay. Like, I like this book. For some reason, that's the thing that hits, and you're just
yeah,
like, you can't call it. Sometimes you can do the
right,
best, you can put the best things in place to give it the best chance, but you just don't know. And that's what makes it
right.
magical as well.
It
What
is, yeah.
I want to know, like, what are the things that you put in place every time for a release to try and give it the best opportunity to find as many readers as possible on release week? What are the things that
Oh
you set
gosh.
up?
I don't even know. Well, setting up ads, right? Getting ready. For that, I do tend to post some TikToks a little bit in advance, maybe like a week or two before release, just to kind of get the ball rolling or get eyes on it. And I really think that was something that helped boost Dating the Defensive Back was that I had a post go viral on TikTok like 3 days before release. So all these pre-orders came in, people got excited about it, and then it released, and then KU people ran to it. And so that really helped it. So that's something I continue to do and pushing it on social media, pushing it in my newsletter. I set up newsletter swaps with other authors. And I started doing, and Valentine PR helps me set this up. They reach out to some influencers who enjoy sports romance, and I'll send them copies of the book to use for a giveaway. So actually, they get to keep the copy, and then they pick the winner, and I'll send them a signed copy of the book. So watch your Instagram because there's probably some going on between now and March 23rd or after that as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, so just giveaways, trying to get as many eyes on it as possible. And you know what? I realized too, I never answered your question about word counts.
Oh, sorry.
So I don't know, I spaced on it, but my goal every day is 2,000 words, but like my secret goal is 3,000. And then if I can get anything beyond that, I'm always really happy. Last week I had 2 days where I wrote 7,000. So it varies. But I set up, do you use Pacemaker? Have you heard of Pacemaker?
I've heard of it. I don't use it, but if you can explain it to us, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Basically, you put in your word count goal that you want total for your book, and you put in your end date, and it'll give you a little calendar of how many words you need to write each day in order to finish by the end date. And it gives you, like, every day when you record your progress, it gives you confetti. So if you're an achiever, it's like, oh my gosh, I need that. Like, I live for this confetti.
The dopamine hit.
Yeah, right. And then at the end, when you hit your word count goal, it gives you like tons of confetti, like firework confetti, and it's like, okay, this is cool. So yeah, I use Pacemaker so that I know how many words I need to write. And actually, right now, because I want to finish April 15th, and my kids have 2 weeks off of school, and I always take off the days when my kids are off, including weekends. I have to write like 2,800 words a day in order to finish by April 15th. So,
I think it's important too. Like I use the software program called Scrivener.
mhm.
And I used to use Word up until last year and they had a sale, and so I purchased it, and it's great. Like both work, so it's fine. But it also has a similar thing like breaking it down. And I think it's important for people to break down what they need. If you have it done by this date, like you really need to break it down backwards. So then that way you're not feeling so like, how am I going to get, 80,000 words all of a sudden? Like it makes it a lot more, you can bite it off bit by bit. So I think that's great, a great resource. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I actually use it too for editing because that's like my least favorite part of the writing process is having to go through edits. So like, or like when I have to reread it the hundredth time. So I'll put it in there like, I want to finish this by Friday. How many pages per day do I need to read in order to finish it by Friday? And it'll kind of set you up that way too. So there's like a lot of different things you can do with it that are helpful.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What does your process look like in the sense that you've written the first, the it's meant to be the book, but it's like the first, you need to go back and tweak things. So do you write it all down? Do you then go back through a second time, or are you handing it over to a developmental editor or a copy line editor? How many editors are we going through? Like, what's your process?
So I actually write very clean first drafts because of my background in teaching high school, but also because of the outlining, I think. And I will kind of develop the ideas. Like if I get stuck on something, it's actually usually my husband. I talk it out with my husband or my author bestie, who Julie Saman. I don't know if you know her, Jay Saman. But we're texting all day, every day. And if I'm stuck on something, we'll kind of talk it out. So just doing that. So I think that makes the story stronger to have those people to bounce ideas off of. And then once I'm finished, I read it through once and make corrections and changes. And then I send it to my first beta, who gives me like the harshest feedback. And then I fix things. And then I send it to my beta team, which is just 3 readers. And then from there, it goes to proofreading. And then that's it. So my first beta is basically my editor because she's like so tough and can find those things in the story, or like my developmental editor. I used to have a developmental editor, but she was having a lot of health issues. And when I stopped working with her because of her, she couldn't work with me anymore. So, and then I switched to this beta. I was getting kind of the same types of feedback. So, it just worked out that way for me. So that's my process.
That's perfect. And I love that too, that you mentioned that you used to have a developmental editor, then you found something that, replicates like the same amount of quality
Yeah.
because, some seasons like we do need that better assistance. And also I think it helps us train us to start looking out for
Right.
those in future projects as well. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. It always changes. Let's talk about Snap Decision. So this comes out
Okay.
March 23rd.
Nice.
Uh, any new experiences while writing this book? Did you have any particular obstacles, or how was writing book
No,
one?
I was, as I was like preparing for the interview, I actually wrote this book in July, August, September of last year. So I'm like kind of far ahead and mainly for audio so that I can have simultaneous audio releases. And so I was trying to think back, like, well, I started at the end of July and my kids go back to school July, like mid-July. So they were back in school for like a week when I started outlining this one. So probably my biggest obstacle with it was that in August I released the first book in the series, which was Mad Rivals. And so I'm sure like anytime you release a book, it kind of stops everything else. And so my goal is always to try to finish the next one before the next one releases, but that's not going to happen with the one I'm working on now. But yeah, so I can't think of like any like fun stories I have about writing it, but I just had fun writing it. Like it was a fun because it's pro football, which most of my books are. But it is a brother's ex who he's been in love with since high school. And she comes to live with him for a little bit while she deals with this breakup and then things happen. There's pining and all the good stuff and angst and
I,
drama.
I love that we always love that things happen. We're like, oh,
I know
yay.
things happen, you
But
know.
no, I absolutely love that. What advice do you have for anyone getting into sports romance as well? Is there any words of wisdom going into that genre?
So I used to write rock star romance before Home Game, which was my first sports romance. I wrote a lot of rock stars. And I decided to make the switch because I could see that sports had a bigger audience than rock star. And so I just tried it and then Home Game went like kind of crazy. And so now I'm sticking here because it's fun here in sports. So I guess my advice would be that you want to write for yourself and write a story that is fun for you to write, especially like kind of the more rom-com sports romance. Make it enjoyable for you. And if you're feeling that joy when you're writing it, your readers will feel it too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I very much agree with that. What what last piece of advice would you have to offer authors who are either near the beginning of their career or perhaps they're feeling a little bit stuck or even a little bit depleted right now as to where they are and where they thought they might be?
Yeah, that's tough. It's interesting you asked this because there was a post in one of the author groups I'm in the other day that was kind of exactly the similar question. But she had published like 3 or 4 books and said February was like her worst month ever and doesn't even know what questions to ask. So she said, what questions did you ask when you were at a point like this where you don't even know what to ask? And so I commented, which I rarely comment on stuff, but I was like, I have something to say. So I said, like February was a tough month for a lot of us. And, I've been doing this a long time. My 81st book releases later this month, and it was one of my worst months in years. But I said, what pulled me out of that was taking something back that I had outsourced. So feeling like I was back in the driver's seat. And it was ads management was that I think I already mentioned that. But I had given it away last May, thinking like, oh, the experts know everything. They're going to do this better than I can. And they did for a long time, and increased my profits and stuff. But then stuff shifted in August with Facebook. If I'm sure if you run Facebook ads, you saw that too. And Amazon changed their algorithms and everything was kind of in upheaval. And so like finally, like I said, I hang on to things way too long. And so it was like 2 weeks ago, I said, I think I need to take these back. So the question I asked was, can I have my ads back? And it's the first week was like a turnaround, and the second week's a little shakier, but I'm in control now. So I feel like I could jump back in and fix things and change things. So for me, anytime I feel that like something's not right or I'm having a hard time with something, then that's kind of my signal that I need to change something. And figuring out what it is sometimes hard, but for me, it was taking my ads back and outsourcing my graphics so that I have time now to work on my ads too. So it all kind of worked together.
Yeah, I think that's great advice too. Just taking a moment because it feels like we're on a hamster wheel half the time.
Yeah.
I say half the time, that was being polite, but it is good to have those days to sit back and reflect and ask what is no longer serving me or how can I feel more confident in the direction that I'm going. And it's
Right.
great too, as you said, that that person had gone onto a Facebook group that they felt safe and comfortable in to ask that question.
Mhm.
And there's so many fantastic groups to be a part of to open up and have that vulnerability and conversation. Or, of course, you also have your tribe as well. So ask your friends.
Yes.
They know you better than anybody else as well. So they should be able to offer some great insight.
Right. Absolutely.
I would love to know what's coming up for you. What do we need to be on the lookout for? And most importantly, where do we follow you?
Oh, okay. So, well, I'm at author Lisa Suzanne on pretty much every platform. So you can follow me there. And up next is Snap Decision, which is coming. After that is actually so she used to date his brother. So it's the brother's book is next. And he's a baseball player. So he's like kind of the black sheep of the family because he's doesn't play football like all the other brothers do. So that's a fun one. And that one's done. It's in audio production right now. And it's coming June 8th. And then there's two more siblings in the family. Liam, which is the one I'm writing right now, and he's coming in August. And then Ivy is the baby at 21. So not really like a baby. And that's coming in October. And then if I have time, I want to do a Christmas, like maybe just a novella, probably around this family since the series will be complete and it'll be kind of a fun little smutty surprise. We'll
Have you
see.
done Christmas before?
I've done one and actually I have it like right next to me. So Second Down Scrooge, and this is a spinoff of Dating the Defensive Back, the Nash Brothers series. So I
How did
did
you,
done one.
I'm curious, how did you go with the Christmas one? Because, some people, like everyone that I've spoken to has done it, has been surprised by how
Yeah.
well it's been received.
Yeah, I saw the year before a lot of new Christmas books were coming out, and so I was like, I'm gonna do one of those. And it was I wrote it in July, and I remember like playing Christmas music to get in the spirit. And then yeah, published it in December, which I would do earlier if I did it again because I did it like December 2nd, and it was kind of late by then. A lot of people had already published, but it still did pretty well, and people love it. Like I bring it to signings and they grab it even like in February.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to have it. And I wrote it after I wrote the third book in the Nash Brothers series. So chronologically, that's where it falls. But again, it's a spinoff and it's characters that's best friends with the female main character in Dating the Defensive Back. So it was just, I was in that world still and it just felt like it'd be a fun little break. But from an author perspective, so I released book 3 in October and then I've been doing like every 2.5 months. So that December release should have been book 4 and it wasn't. It was 6 months between books 3 and books 4. And so I kind of regret that I wish I could have done the Christmas one as just like a surprise little, here's another book, and kept on that pace, but live and learn. So
Yeah.
can't do anything about it.
Thank you for sharing that, though. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Um,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for taking the time to come on as well. Who knows? We might watch this space and get you on in another couple of years.
I would love that. Yeah. It sounds good. It was so nice meeting you and talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. And for everybody else, we will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.